Welcome back to the 27th. Patch 1.3.3.0 was released today, which means updated patch notes. Once again, solid progress was made on all fronts, including big changes to the UI, AI, and physics. Not to mention content. We'll be going over all of it right now. But first, I feel obligated to mention something with regards to recent personal developments. If you are not a Boltcast listener, sometime back in November, I was given the opportunity to join Raze's internal testing team, which I happily took. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me. Since that point, my relationship with Raze has grown, requiring a definitive statement to you, the viewer, that I am not an objective commentator. I am also not an official spokesperson for Raze. If that shapes your opinion about the content I create, so be it. I'm sure you have already subscribed to other YouTube channels where this arm's length relationship is still intact. My only goal here with this channel now is to help facilitate your enjoyment of AMS2 the best that I can. Just know that whatever content I create like this will be limited to whatever public statements that are made by this man, Renato Simeoni. In a nutshell, if I say anything like, this is awesome, or this new feature is fantastic, that is my opinion and I am entitled to that. It's up to you to decide whether or not to trust it within this context. But know this, I am a fan of AMS2 first, and always have been. I will not be criticizing my new colleagues, they work too hard, and I respect what they do too much. My integrity in this regard I hold higher than any obligation or affiliation. I'm not trying to influence you to like or play AMS2 either. You can make that decision for yourself. My goal is to help you enjoy AMS2 as best I can, keep you informed and educate so we can all grow as sim racers together. Okay, so let's get into what you came here for. If you're still listening to this, thank you for sticking around. As usual, I'm going to go through the changelog line by line, highlighting some things. Here it is from Renato. Quote, the first Automobilista 2 update of 2022 is now live. Version 1.3.3.0 adds the FUSA Gen 3 with the Reynard 2KI and Lola B2K/00 and Road America to the Racing USA Part 2 DLC. That's so stupid. The new F Retro Gen 3 class featuring the McLaren MP4-1C, the GTS variants of the Polo and Virtus to the TSI Cup class, along with several other improvements, the most notable of which are developments to the cockpit camera physics and related options. Moving on, below some important notes regarding the updates to the cockpit camera physics. Okay, we're getting right into it. Let's go. Before version 1.3.3.0, the camera G-force effect was only enabled longitudinally, braking and acceleration, with no lateral G-force effect from cornering, or vertically from bumps and suspension movement. Even at 100% G-force setting, we have now added settings for lateral and vertical G-force effects like in AMS1. I didn't know that. I never played AMS1, but that sounds neat. Before version 1.3.3.0, G-forces, leaning effects, and look to apex effects would only work in helmet camera mode. Now these effects apply irrespective if you're running helmet camera mode or not. Okay, so that means if you're using cockpit cam mode, you might start experiencing helmet cam effects, so keep that in mind. As of 1.3.3.0, track IR users are able to change the camera G-force. That's neat. Before 1.3.3.0, VR and track IR users were forced to use the SMS legacy camera head movement mode. Boo! Now VR and track IR users can enable our camera head movement mode in the camera setting screen if desired. Yay! It allows, for example, for the driving to align with the horizon in banked corners like Daytona without having to resort to camera orientation. Note, however, that for existing profiles, your previous VR settings are preserved, so nothing will change for you unless you decide to change it in your camera settings screen. And then here they have a screenshot of the new updated default camera settings scrolling down, and here's a beautiful picture of, it appears to be obviously a McLaren, and I'm sure it's one of that's the F Retro Gen 3 generic version at Brands Hatch. I can tell by that bridge in the back. And judging by the fact that the generic looks like it's passing the McLaren, I would bet that that's the turbo. Okay, moving on. So the tracks, they've added Road America to Racing USA Part 2 DLC pack. This was promised and it's now been delivered. The vehicles that they're adding are the FUSA Gen 3 class featuring the Reynard 2KI, the Lola B2K-00. There's several different engine variants within those chassis models. They also added F-Retro Gen 3 class featuring, as mentioned before, the McLaren and the F-Retro Gen 3 Turbo and the DFY aspirated version, which is a little bit more user-friendly. They added the VW Polo GTS and Virtus GTS to the TSI Cup class. Okay, let's move into the general. A lot of stuff here, a lot of cool stuff. Like mentioned before, they made the helmet and cockpit cameras orientation changes that come with G-force effect to be scaled by the G-force slider settings. Previously, only the camera position change was scaled, not the orientation. For VR camera settings, they enabled legacy and new head movement toggles for VR users. World movement was renamed to head movement. Current users of world movement settings will be maintained and converted to an equivalent head movement setting. That's convenient. And here's a big one, and I don't know very much about this, and I hear it here and there. Shared memory, and this deals with things like SimHub and Crew Chief and things like that. They updated the header to the V10. They added tire temp LMR, I guess that means in, middle, out, I guess. Ride height, session duration, which were previously only available via UDP. They added DRS state, added session, additional laps information, extended car flags to include TCS and SCS active state. The latest header changelog sample project now available in the support directory of the game. So I guess this is important for people that are really big into their, their UIs that they create. And I'm glad to see that AMS2 has finally given you guys something to really dig your teeth into. Moving on, they fixed an issue with a championship editor which would lead to incorrect race 2 starting order if both races did not use the same duration type. They added a fallback to find any race 1 result as the basis for race 2 in existing save games. I think that's, like one of those annoying bugs that people came across with Championship. It's good that they're addressing that. Moving forward, this is for Thrustmaster wheel types. They made brake pedal sensitivity linear by default. Okay. They fixed stale driver button states requiring double click of race ready button if a user drove a previous session of a multiplayer event. Okay, so if you're ready, you don't have to click it twice anymore. That's what that means, I think. For the UI and HUD, they added front rear tire selection to the quick setup menu. They added current lap info to the position widget HUD in timed races, and they fixed in-game camera options screen not correctly hiding VR options. Okay, those are all nice. Let's move into the physics. It looks like a lot, but it's like a wide net. They did a minor tread adjustment to the Formula Risa V10, the V12, Formula Ultimate, Formula Classics, all generations, Group C, Group A, BMW M1 Pro car. They added driveline elasticity models to some of the cars that hadn't previously had it. Lancer Cup, TSI Cup, JCW Mini, Copa truck. I wonder what the driveline flex or elasticity sounds like with a Copa truck. Good lord. Formula Ultimate. They revised the wheel spin inertia for all cars. Now, wheel spin inertia is related to the weight of the actual wheels, so the rims, the tires, and more importantly, how that weight is distributed on the wheels. If you ever look at the modern F1, they have really thick tires and the rim is relatively small. I think they're 13 inches. That means that the inertia is less than, you'll see the 18-inch models that are coming out next year, where the tire tread or the tire thickness is thinner, but the wheels themselves, it makes the car work harder to get the wheels moving, and also when you're on brakes, it's harder to slow down. So it kind of smooths everything out. It also has an effect on how the tire dynamics work as well. So you're going to be able to feel these kinds of things. If they improved the inertia for the tires or the wheels, for example, in a GTE, if you hit the throttle, it may be a little more, it's got a little more oomph to it when you hit that throttle. Moving on, they disabled now redundant auto clutch, forcing off in semi-auto F1s, which fixes the car stalling even with auto clutch setting on. Huzzah! This has been a problem for, you know, almost 2 years. This is fantastic. I think I've read this on the forums, you know, periodically, almost on a regular basis. You can set your monthly calendar to it. They further adjusted clutch heating and wear improvements and adjusted update rate, introducing modeling for wear, for failure, for, it looks here like flash and burst parameters. So anybody out there with, you know, they like to use the clutch and their shifters, you're going to have to drive these cars now with more precision than you ever had before, because if you don't and you drive like it's going to hurt you in the long run. In that regard, all street cars now have clutch damage. They revised F1 driveline inertias we've explained before on this channel. That's simply similar to the wheel inertias. That's simply the flexibility within the driveline and the weights of the components and things like that, and how they absorb energy and release energy. They added clutch damage and heating model and clutch damage attributes to the DPI, GT1, GTE, GT3, C3, C3R, Omega, and multiple F1s. And then finally with physics, they did some updated defaults, or I did some updated default setups for. I got to stop using they. I don't know what it is. It just feels easier to say than we. Anyway. We did some default setup adjustments for the M1 Pro car, Group A, Group 3, Corvette C3R, Porsche RSR, Ginetta G40 Cup, Ginetta G40 GT5, Porsche Cup Stock Car 21 and 22, Mercedes CLK GT1, AJR all variants, the MRX all variants, the Rocco, as well as including the F3s. You can add the GTEs to this class, this category as well. All of these cars will require a default setup reset. So if you have custom setups, unfortunately, if they're based on the previous default, they may no longer work. And there's reasons because of this. Once the default setting is changed, the math in the game, the way they pull the numbers, may actually change your setup to something that you didn't intend. So it's best practice to delete your customs, reset and resave the new default, and then recreate your custom setups as derivatives from the new default. The best way I can describe doing this is change your in-game session from increments to rates, so you can see the actual physics of these, you know, the springs and the dampers and things like that. You know, look at the newtons per millimeter and not the increments themselves. If you take a quick camera picture of that with your phone, it'll be faster for you to when you recreate these new setups. You can just take a look at your phone and click, and line them up as best as you can. Moving forward, they adjusted engine wear. Said it again. We adjusted. I don't know what to say. They adjusted engine wear increase with boost settings for F Classic turbo engines, and induced default wastegate settings to account for higher engine wear at higher settings. Okay, so this was in particular due to the new Retro Gen 3. The spool turbo that this has is magnificent, and it has to have some type of side effects, and that one of the side effects is if you run on 80, more than 55 or 60% boost, you're going to wear your engine out. If you run on 80% boost, consider that qualifying, hot lap mode or something, party mode as Mercedes would call it. But be known that if you take that into the race, you're going to have some issues down the line. As far as AI, some really great improvements. Let's start off with they hard-coded the radius values for AI detection of corners ahead. This should fix some existing AI logic not triggering in some corners. They added AI series-specific radius check and distance ahead to look before trying to overtake. Oh, they didn't look before trying to overtake before. Well, that's good that they fixed it. They adjusted AI decision behavior when an AI driver is attempting to avoid cutting the track but has a player vehicle On the opposite, should prevent some cases of AI hitting players laterally. Okay, so that's been around for a while. They added a per weekend basis consistency personality logic for AI. That's good. Slightly increased AI side calc range to further reduce chance of AI cars being scared out of the way by player coming up and behind it. Oh, I thought I was just, my imposing presence. They also adjusted the AI rolling resistance adjustments for GT3, GT4, GTE, P1, P2, P3, P4. Basically, this is straight line speed. The last video I put out at Daytona, I was at 120 strength, and I basically made it look like they were driving GT4s. They're going to make it a little bit more difficult for me moving forward. I think I kind of take responsibility for being a catalyst for that kind of a change. For the audio-wise, one small thing. Oh, poor audio. They updated the crash sound effects, so that's interesting. So if you're in a crash, pay attention to how it sounds. For the tracks, they updated the weather and climates in European and Northern American locations to ease transitions in seasonal foliage. So in between seasons, they're going to stay similar to the previous season. They adjusted rolling starts and TT starting points. Oh, okay, good. This is something that's interesting. Kansai, Monza, Ortona, Silverstone, Snetterton, Spielberg, Velocita, Velo Park, and Virginia International. Their TT starting points are going to make more sense so that you can be up to speed by the time you hit the line, as opposed to having to go around an entire lap to be at full speed. At Monza, they added missing grandstands, ad boards, gantries, grounded floating poles at the Lesmos in Monza 1991. See, they're always tinkering with the tracks. So if they release a track today, maybe more aesthetically pleasing a month from now, and Monza was a couple months ago, so they're always going to be working on these. Daytona, they updated AI lines and corridors. I think this in particular has to do with the bus stop. They updated trackside cameras for Brands Hatch and Curitiba. I don't think Curitiba exists, Norbs, so how did you do that? Question mark. Vehicles, Reynard 98i, they fixed the left mirror bug, finally. Yay! This is another one of those things that has been just annoying people on the forums. The left rear view mirror was always facing down. It looks like they fixed that. That's well needed. They added dirt damage texture, changed rain tire texture, they updated the cockpit tires, and they adjusted suspension animation for all FUSA models. So that's it. That wraps up patch 1.3.3, and we're going to finish with a lovely picture of some carts going around. I assume that's Road America. Yes, it is. I can tell. I've driven that track a couple of times over the past few days. So I hope you all enjoy it. In the meantime, thanks for watching and take care.